There is a game that is not exactly on the lead marquee for a lot of networks, but boy, it's huge. You know, if you're a more diehard college football fan, you just look at the logos, LSU and Mississippi State. You just look at these logos and you know, oh, I remember that from last year. Yeah, everybody does. And so here we go. I think it's a huge hinge game for LSU. They're favored by 2.5. Are the Bayou Bengals. They're going on the road. This is a noon kickoff. It's a very funny Saturday slate. All 3 games we're breaking down tonight. The Wisconsin-Notre Dame games at noon Eastern time. This LSU-Mississippi State games at noon Eastern time. The A&M-Arkansas games at 3:30. Most of the big games are out of the way by the time the sun goes down. I'm not bothered by that. Some people are. But this has hinge written all over it. Remember how we talked about Penn State, Wisconsin in week 1 and how whether Penn State won or lost was going to be a massive hinge moment for the rest of the season? That is where LSU is right now. I want you to picture yourself living in a world where it's not even the last week of September and LSU has 2 losses. One of them to UCLA and one of them to Mississippi State. You cannot fathom how uncomfortable things would get down in Baton Rouge. They already are. But, you know, if this were to happen, I think in a lot of ways it's kind of not pushing it to the edge of the cliff. It's kind of pushing it over the cliff. Huge hinge moment. Because here's the other side of that coin. What happens if they go into Starkville and they win 36-17? Passing game clicks, secondary plays a whole lot better, and all of a sudden you say, oh, that's the LSU team I thought was going to show up in week 1. As we've said several times in the last week, there's going to be some team out there, maybe more than one teams, that are left for dead, that get off the deck, dust themselves off, look around and realize, look at all these players we have. And then all of a sudden they find that gear. Could be LSU. You see what I mean when I say hinge? So we're taking a look at LSU's schedule. If you're watching on YouTube, it gets no easier. So they got to get it done this weekend. When you say this out loud, boy, it sounds like it favors LSU, doesn't it? Think about the matchup. Mississippi State does not run it. They are a horrible run team. They don't even pretend to try and do it. You've got the total inverse, therefore, of the matchup that gave LSU nightmares in week 1. UCLA ran it all over LSU. And so you may think styles make fights. Well, if they do, and I would agree with that, this couldn't be any different a team than LSU faced and got beat by in week 1. Maybe that means something, maybe it means nothing. But if your strength is through the air, and if we're going to find a strength of the LSU defense so far, it's the secondary, even though I'd like to see them play a lot better, you would think the matchup would favor LSU. Shouldn't they win? I mean, that's what I would ask. Shouldn't they win? Well, Mississippi State, if you watch them, you understand what I'm about to say. There's a difference in throwing the ball to win. You can do it a lot of different ways. You could do Clemson versus Alabama circa 2018 and just say our guys are going to beat your guys and just throw it up and let them win 50-50 balls. Or you can scheme guys open. And you can acknowledge, hey, there's a lot of talent in this LSU secondary. There was last year too. And we scheme guys open. Now, last year and this year are going to look totally different. Because last year, it was Bo Pelini outright refusing to do anything than run press man coverage all day. So there is a Z word sometimes you insert defensively. It's called zone. I'm not so sure we may not see it a few more times this Saturday than we did last year. But by and large, Mike Leach understands, and that offense is predicated on scheming guys open, at which point it comes down to either execution and or yards after catch as to who's going to win this game. But LSU leads the nation in tackles for loss right now. It's early in the season. There's a reason, because of the way games have tilted, that they lead the nation. But they do. They're up there in sacks. They're up there in tackles for loss. So part B here that LSU's really got to take advantage of is Will Rogers and that Mike Leach offense, it's also predicated on getting the ball out quick. So you're looking at trying to negate a couple of perceived strengths of this LSU defense. It all comes down to execution. It all comes down to winning those early downs. And it all comes down to holding serve. And then you look at LSU on offense. And then you look at the feeling you've had, if you've watched them the last couple of weeks, where it's anything but perfect, but at least you feel like some things are starting to click offensively. You feel like Max Johnson is starting to build some chemistry. The problem is, up to and including this very moment, no one has any confidence in LSU being able to run the ball to win football games. And until that changes, they're going to be a wildly volatile offensive product. They are not going to run the ball to win this game Saturday. They're not. Ed Orgeron confirmed that Tyrion Davis-Price is going to be a starter. I'd bet you money he doesn't get the most carries in this game Saturday. And I'd also bet you money that when we watch LSU, if they do win, it's going to be because Max Johnson and this passing game and some of those receivers that have thus far underachieved started to hit stride a little bit. That's what it's going to take. This is not going to be some Michigan 17 passes to 47 runs type effort. It's going to be throwing the ball. And as a result, and there's a line of thinking out there that these defensive units may rule the day. I don't think so. I think it's going to be a game in the 30s instead of a game in the low to mid 20s. And so let's take a look, Jesse. Oh, boy, roll the dice here, if you will. Let's take a look at what the model thinks and what the Vegas number is. Again, right now at Caesars, LSU is a 2.5-point favorite. Our model's inside of that. It's got LSU -1. Here's what I arrived at. I could find just enough margin to where I liked LSU. So I'm going to take LSU to win. I'm going to take LSU to cover. And I'm going to tell you what I told Director Colin out there in the bomb shelter before the show started. I said, Colin, if you wanted to argue with me that Mississippi State's going to win this game, I wouldn't push back on you all that hard. But if they do, it creates an alternative universe in my mind that I just don't think we've arrived at yet. And the universe that we will enter on Saturday afternoon, if Mississippi State beats LSU, will be a fundamental shift down there. It will be nothing less than a fundamental over-the-cliff type shift, because anybody who's holding out hope will relinquish that hope if they, being LSU, can't get it done Saturday. Thus the definition of a hinge game. So I'm going to take LSU to win. I'm going to take LSU to cover, and hope for you all's sake I'm right down there.